Hello everyone, my name is Muhammad Abdul and today I'm going to show you how can you fetch data and make post requests and get requests from Nuxt JavaScript. Before going into this, let me explain what is Nuxt in a pretty easy way. So Nuxt is a framework that's built upon Vue. It gives you features like server-side rendering. What does server-side rendering do? It's simply we use server-side rendering for fast rendering and also to make Google or any engine crawler to see our data. And this will help us in search engine optimization. Rather than Vue is like an SPA single page application, and when we send or when we request the front end from the server, it will send back an empty page called index.html with the JavaScript bundle that will show us the data. So basically, Google will never see any page. That's why we use Nuxt for server-side rendering and search engine optimization. I think you clicked on this video to see the fetch not explaining Nuxt, and so let's get started. So let's go to the data fetching in Nuxt. We have three composables: useFetch, useAsyncData, and $fetch. Let's start with $fetch. $fetch is a composable that we use it's built upon useFetch library, and what happens is when we call this function, simply it will fetch data and make simple requests. The only problem with $fetch is if we use it in the setup. And why do we use it in the setup without any type of function? Because we want it to be executable on the server, so when the data comes back, it should have, when the page comes back and the component should have data in it, so Google can read it. Let me demonstrate this in Figma right here. Let's say that this is the backend server. Let me just get on. This is the back end. And this is, let's go here, this is the front end server. And this is here the user. When we request a specific page from the client side, in our case the phone, the front end here will have the component in it, or the page. In our case, let's call it index. This index has a JavaScript code and a $fetch, for example, to fetch data. What will happen is it will call the data and execute this JavaScript code, and this backend will get back with the data, and then Nuxt server, or the front end, will send back the component with the data and with the JavaScript bundle. And here in the middle, data is visible to Google, for example. Okay, this is Chrome. Okay, let me just type Google because it's bad. I hope you guys understand this in a very simple way. The problem is when this code gets to the phone, it will be executable. It will execute the JavaScript bundle again, and that's the problem. So if we use $fetch, the normal fetch, it will execute the data again, and then we will have duplicate request for the server, and that's actually, well, it doesn't make sense. So the other approach simply is to use useFetch composables. Let me explain this again. So useFetch is a wrapper around $fetch that fetches data only once. How does it fetch it once? Let us explain. So this time, when we make a request and this code will be executable. Okay, you know what? Let me just copy this. Get back. I will show you guys what I mean in a second. Cool. So this is the old. Okay, so now when we use useFetch instead when we use useFetch in the like setup here to fetch data, what will happen is that here the index page with the JavaScript code, and this time it has useFetch. Nuxt will take the data and save it in a specific key that is being generated by useFetch. Okay, so now when Nuxt will put these data in a specific key. Why? I will show you why. Because now when the component is ready with the JavaScript bundle that has also the useFetch, this time Google will read it, okay? Again, so Google will still read the data, but in the front end, the JavaScript bundle will not execute the useFetch composable again to the server. Why? Because this one has the same key as this one, and we said that Nuxt will save the data in this specific key. So here in the front end, when we do the useFetch again, it will be like, I will not do a new request. I will just pass this data and use it right here. So I will not have duplicate requests for the server. And that's why we use useFetch. So under the hood, useFetch is a $fetch. What about useAsyncData? Simply useAsyncData is exactly the same as useFetch, but you gain more control. Let's see some examples. As you can see here, const data await useFetch. This is in the setup without any type of function. And for handle form submission, we used $fetch, even though you can still use useFetch for post request, and that's totally fine. Okay. Here in the example above, useFetch would make sure that the request would occur in the server and is probably forwarded to the browser. That means it will be called once. And $fetch has no such mechanism and is better option to use when the request is solely made from the browser. But as I told you, you can still use useFetch. And for me, I love to use useFetch even with post request, because why not? It's great. It's amazing. So this will generate a specific key for itself in the server and in the client. So that's why it will be executable once. And we can talk about keys now and show you what I mean. So now we can just create a new page and call it joke.view. And let me just add like joke, and let me just add vbase 3 setup. Cool. So, and we will go to this ICANN has that joke. I don't know. It's like an API that gives you random jokes. Let me do this. So we can just be like const. I know before going into this, let's talk about the useFetch composable, because we're going to use it. So useFetch in Nuxt. So useFetch, as we talked before, is a wrapper around $fetch. We use it to make sure that the request will be made once on the server, not on the server and on the client side. And also we use it to generate cached data based on request, and we will demonstrate this in a second. And a very good thing about useFetch that we can take things from it, like data, which is a ref component, status, which is also a ref component, and error also, and refresh and clear are functions. Let's test this out. Const will take data from await useFetch composable to this API, and I will just name it joke. Simply, this just means that take data and put it in a variable called joke. It's like the same thing, I just name it to joke. And I should add a header, and this will be accept application/JSON. Normally, you don't have to add these in useFetch because they are being added by default. But for some reason, I will add it here because if I don't, I will see an HTML, so that's why. So we will just add it for, you know, secure purposes. And simply we can now put data, not data, sorry, joke. Can we see it? Cool, we saw the joke. Let's also add h1. This is the joke, and we can see the joke right here. So joke dot joke. So cool, we took a joke from the backend and we made it right here, and we made sure that it's being called once. So if I used $fetch, I will make the request twice, and that's pretty unacceptable, most likely. Okay, there's a problem, so stick with useFetch right now. So again, if I want to fetch data in the setup to make sure Google reads it, and what do I mean by Google reads it? So now if I went to Control U, which is the source code, I will see the joke. Let me copy the joke and just find it. We should find it, wait. Let me just refresh it. Yeah, see, we found the joke. So now Google can read this source code from this page. So that's why we use useFetch also, and server-side rendering, etc. So again, useFetch is a wrapper around $fetch that we use it to make sure that we make one request at a time. We can use $fetch for post requests. Also, we can use useFetch for post requests. So now let's talk about keys and caching. What do I mean by keys and caching? So now I have made a joke 2 with the same thing, and I made the same joke 2 and joke 2. Let's add 2 BR tags and refresh. As you can see, there's a problem here or something. Oh yeah, sorry, it's joke 2. Cool. Let's refresh. As you can see, I get 2 different jokes. Why? Because this has its own key, and this has its own key, and these data are or the $fetch under useFetch now is cached in a specific key by Nuxt, and we can see this in the payload. If we went here to payload, I think it's hey, yeah. See, I have specific keys made by Nuxt itself. See? And that's what I'm trying to tell you, that useFetch caches the data, and maybe that's why Nuxt tell us to use $fetch in handled form submission, because we don't need to cache anything. But here Nuxt cache it because we want to make sure that the server doesn't do it twice. But if I added a key, for example, like joke, guess what? We will have now, let me just refresh. As you can see now, I have a joke key and another weird key generated by Nuxt. So that's cool. So now this data is going to be cached in this joke key by the server and also by the client, so I can access it. So this one, so as I told you, Nuxt will generate these keys to make sure that the front end and the back end share the same data, and the user cannot access these data by the payload. But when I give it a specific key, it's like me telling Nuxt, you know what, don't generate your own key, use mine, because maybe I will use this in the front end. So what does this do? So now simply I can just go with const the same thing, data joke 3 this time, and then instead of use fetch, I will just use Nuxt data, which will go to the payload and give me the joke key. And now guess what? If I put joke 3 here instead of 2, will have the same joke here and here because I just used the same key. And also the same thing I could do in what? In fetching. Even with useFetch, I could provide the same key as joke and refresh it. Then I will have one fetch request happened. It's pretty incredible. So what happened now is this request has been to the server and has been made. This one also have been to the server, but it's not made there. Why? Because we have the key and the key is the same as this. So in the server, the response is the cache data from this. And when both got back to the client, both are cached from the server, which is the payload, which is the joke. I hope you guys understood what I'm trying to tell you. So simply useFetch is a wrapper around $fetch to give keys to this $fetch to make it easy to us and the server and the client to handle multiple requests which are the same. Because as we talked previously in Figma, that the request will be executable, I mean the JavaScript bundle will be executable in the server to give us the component and make Google read it, and also will be executable in the front end, I mean in the client side, so we can actually interact with our app. So having a key will minimize the two requests from this bundle and this bundle to one. But when I add my own key, that means that, okay, Nuxt, use mine, not yours, because maybe I'm going to use it. Like as we saw before, for example, use Nuxt data, and we just put joke. I think that's super good, super incredible, and that's how can we use data. I mean useFetch with use Nuxt data and caching. So it's pretty cool. Let's talk about other composables. Not other composables, I mean other things that comes with useFetch, like status, refresh, and clear. Let's now just skip this and do it in another example called products. So let me now just create a page called products dot view, and vbase 3 setup, the same thing, and I will go here and just add another link to products, and I'll just call it products. And now we can go here. There's another API called fake store API that we will use right now. It simply give us products. So now let me just do this, get back here, and let's go to products and do the same thing. I will simply const and take data from an await function to a useFetch composable, and I will put this API. Is this cool? And I'll just call it products. So why did we use fetch again, not $fetch or normal fetch? Because this ensures me that I will take, I mean, it will not be duplicated on the server or the front-end server and the client side. Can I provide my own key? Yes, I can provide my own key, but I don't think I'm going to use these products in another place. So keys also, let me just tell you this pretty quick. So we also use keys to make like a global state, you know? So when you have like a specific fetch that will be happening in a specific page, and maybe in another page you want to still have the same data, and instead of fetch it again or even store it in a store, you could just use the same key and use Nuxt data to get back these data. So this is why we use keys. But for now, I will make Nuxt generate its own keys. So let me now show you in the payload. If I just refresh, I can look at the payload, and as you can see, I have these products and its own specific key. I don't want to give any type of keys for it. So cool. Let me now just do a simple card pretty quick. So grid slash goals slash 3 and gap 4. Let me do div class border b4, and then let's go with image. I think it should be grid. And the source will be, okay, let me just make a v4 loop very quick. Product in products, and let me just provide a key, and this key will be product itself, and then here we'll just product dot image, and let me just add also a b, which will have the product dot title. Now let me refresh. Cool. As we can see here, the request has been made. So now let me also add here like a B. These are the products. Let's now see something pretty cool. When I go to the products page, wait, let me refresh. Okay, let me just put this on the top. I don't know how to explain this, but Nuxt have something called suspense. Let me explain this pretty quick. So suspense, what is suspense? Let me now show. Yes, okay. Nuxt uses views suspense component under the hood to prevent navigation before every async data is available to the view. So when we actually switch routes, Nuxt will not show us the component till it arrives from the server side with all the data in it. So if I have a useFetch component and a wait keyword as well, I mean useFetch composable in a component, and in our case a page, if I'm going to switch to this page, I will never see this page till the data is what is finished. So let me also explain this another way. So now let me take a status, because useFetch give us a status, and let's put it under this and type status. Refresh it and go back to products. See, success. It's always success. I will always see the success. Why? Because again, I will never see like the bending phase till, because Nuxt by default uses suspense that prevents me from seeing the data, seeing the component before the data reaches out to the client. And also they tell us that you can add Nuxt loading indicator. Let me show you what does this do pretty quick. So this will just give us a green line that gives us the feeling that, okay, the data are being fetched. I will never see the page till the data arrives. See? I will never see the page till the data arrives. I hope you guys understand what I'm talking about. But maybe you don't want to use this feature. Maybe you want to see the page even if the data has not arrived, and maybe show us a skeleton till the data arrives. In this case, we use another thing called lazy fetch. So in the useFetch, here I will add a new like an option called lazy true. So now see, I can see the bending phase when you switch. See, I see like there's a flash of the word bending, then I see success. So why? So when I use fetch lazy is true, that means that, okay, Nuxt, show me the page. I don't care if the data arrived or not. I see the page and then I will just wait for the data. And in this case, we could show another things in it as well. We could show like a loading state, etc. Let me now show you what I mean. So now I could just put here class, not class, like vf status equal bending. In our case, just show me a loading word with 3 dots. See? I'm seeing a loading now, a loading word. Now, if I'm not using lazy true, I will never see this word, because Nuxt will prevent me to go to this page or see anything in it till the data comes back. See? We'll never see it. So that's why we use lazy true. Also, I don't know why Nuxt gave us the same thing. Like you could use it, just use lazy fetch instead of fetch. So use lazy fetch will do the same thing exactly. I don't know why they have this composable, but they just do. And I guess that's it. In this tutorial, we just I showed you how can we use fetching with useFetch. We explained why do we use useFetch, not like the normal fetch, which is $fetch in Nuxt, because of duplicated requests. We also talked about that useFetch and useAsyncData are both the same thing. They will just cache the data from the $fetch into a specific key to send it back to the client, in our case the phone maybe, or the browser, etc. And we could give it a specific key so we can also reach out to this data, not just Nuxt. Yes, Nuxt could be complicated for the first time, but once you see it and try it, you will see how much it's great, it's optimized, everything. One last thing, that if you want to do a post request, you could follow Nuxt and use fetch the $fetch normally, because useFetch in all cases will cache the data in a specific key. Could be by you or the key by the generated key by Nuxt itself. So that's why does Nuxt tells you to use $fetch in the post requests? Because you don't want to fetch, you don't want to cache any response from post requests, because you mostly use post requests to change something on the server, not to get back data. So we use $fetch to not see any type of, how can I say this, to not like put cached messages in the payload and take from the RAMs. So for more optimized thing, we don't use useFetch and post request, we use $fetch. And for me, I do love use both. I use both. But you know what? Let me give you something pretty extra, pretty quick. So in useFetch, they give you an error message. So I could just put an error, and if I put like something else here, I will not get data, and probably I will get an error. Console. I think there's, okay. What I'm trying to say, that if the response returned 404 or like 400 or 401, that means like there's something went wrong. You can take back the error by just taking this and put it up here, maybe, and you can see the error. There's no errors now. But when we use something like $fetch, say we need to do like a function called const handle, for example, post, which is the post request. It's an error function. We can see now I could use like const data equal to fetch, and let me just do like example. I think Fixstore have like a post request. Yeah, we do have a post request. So now let's test this. What about that? Yeah. Let's use this and put things like, you could use this with the useFetch, but as I told you, useFetch will cache the data and a key, and we don't want this in post request, so that's why we use this. Let's also like put this as well. What I'm trying to tell you guys now, that if this has an error, so like let's just put a button class button primary, and let's just put @click handle post. Let's go to the inspect now. When I click on a button now, I should get an error probably. I'm not getting a type of error. I don't know why, but the thing is, I should get an error. The thing Okay, forget about this. What I'm trying to tell you guys that in use lazy fetch or use fetch composable, if you want to get an error, you just do this. But in $fetch, you have to use try and catch block. So you try and then you catch it by like catch and then error. So two different ways to handle errors for like useFetch or useAsyncData. You take an error back, but in $fetch you have to do try and catch. Again, when do we use $fetch? We use it mostly in post request because we don't care about because you will never use a post request in the start of the web. You will always use get probably. And also we can still use fetch or use a latch with post request. For example, let's say that you have data and these data are, you want to fetch it with post, maybe not get, I don't know why. You could still use something like method, and this method could be like post. It's like it's all the same thing. But the thing is, when you use post, when you use fetch or use lazy fetch or use async fetch or use async data, all will catch the data in a specific key. But when we use $fetch, it's like you're removing the wrapper. Whether it's use fetch, use asyncData, etc., you'll remove this wrapper and use $fetch. Why? To just do a request. You don't care about caching the data because it's a call action button. Alright guys, I hope you actually enjoyed the tutorial. It's kind of complicated with Nuxt, but I think with practice you can guys understand it. So yeah, thank you all and thanks for watching.